Ego sat in the corner of her small kitchen that morning, slowly peeling cassava. The sound of the knife scraping against it was the only thing she could hear. Her eyes were swollen from crying in the night again. It had been 8 years since she married her husband, Chike. 8 long years, and no child had come. No little voice in the house. No tiny hands calling her Mama. From the very first year of her marriage, she had faced mockery. Chike's mother never liked her. The old woman had already chosen a village girl named Adanma for Chike to marry, but Chike refused and chose Ego instead. That choice had brought trouble. Anytime Ego visited her husband's family home, his mother would look her from head to toe and laugh. Sometimes she would say loudly to anyone who cared to listen, "Some women marry only to eat and get fat. Others marry to give children. Look at the one my son brought home." Chike's younger sisters were even worse. They would giggle and whisper when Ego walked past. They would purposely talk about other women who had just given birth, turning to look at Ego with sly smiles. Ego had tried to ignore them. She had prayed. She had fasted. She had even gone to native doctors when her friends convinced her. But still, no child. That day, she decided to go to the market to buy vegetables. Chike had gone to work early in the morning, and she thought maybe keeping herself busy would ease her mind. The market was crowded and noisy. Women shouted prices. Children ran around chasing each other. The smell of fish, fresh palm oil, and roasted corn filled the air. Ego walked quickly, head down, trying not to draw attention. She picked up a basket of tomatoes and started bargaining with the seller. But before she could pay, another woman, Mama Ifeoma, pushed past her roughly. "Ah, is it your father's market?" Ego asked, not angrily, but just surprised. Mama Ifeoma turned to her and laughed bitterly. "And you, who are you to talk to me? Go and find child first before you talk to mothers. You are just barren, wasting space." The words hit Ego like a slap. Her hands began to shake. She couldn't even respond. She dropped the basket of tomatoes, turned around, and walked out of the market. Her legs carried her without thinking. She didn't go home. She didn't even think about where she was going. All she knew was that her chest was tight and her eyes were filled with tears. Before she knew it, she was standing at the edge of the river. The water was calm, reflecting the blue sky above. The sound of the rushing current filled the air. Ego fell to her knees on the soft sand. She covered her face with both hands and began to cry. "God, why me?" she sobbed. "What did I do to deserve this shame? Why did you let me marry if I will never hold my own child?" Her cries grew louder, mixing with the sound of the flowing water. She wept until her voice became hoarse. Suddenly, boom! A deep, thunderous voice echoed across the river. "Woman!" Ego froze. She lifted her head slowly, looking around. There was no one there. The voice had come from nowhere, and yet it seemed to be everywhere. "Do you truly want a child?" the voice asked. Ego gasped. Her heart was pounding so fast she could hear it in her ears. She scrambled to her feet, ready to run. But the voice came again, deeper and calmer this time. "Do not run. Answer me." Ego's lips trembled. Who are you?" she stammered. "I am the spirit of this river." The voice replied, "I have watched you cry here many times in your heart, even when your feet were far away. I have heard your pain, but I must ask again, do you truly want a child?" Ego felt weak in her knees. She swallowed hard and whispered, Yes, I want a child. More than anything." The river rippled gently, though there was no wind. "If I give you a child, will you promise to bring the child back to me every 7 years? Will you promise to let the child worship the river forever?" Ego's mind spun. Worship the river? Bring the child back? She didn't fully understand what that meant. But the thought of finally having a baby, of finally silencing her mother-in-law's laughter, made her desperate. She nodded quickly, tears falling down her cheeks. "Yes, I promise. I will bring the child. I will do anything. Just Please, give me a child." "You must keep your word," the voice warned. "If you break it, the river will take back what it gave you." Ego nodded again, almost too fast. "I won't break it, I swear. Please, help me." The voice was silent for a moment. Then it said softly, "Go home. You will hear good news soon." Ego blinked. "But the child? Where? When?" "Go," the voice said firmly. "The river has spoken." The water stilled again, as if nothing had happened. The air was silent except for the sound of birds. Ego stood there for a moment, still trembling. She didn't know if what just happened was real or if she had imagined it. Her hands were cold. Her clothes were damp with sweat. Slowly, she turned and began to walk back toward the village. Her legs felt heavy. Her mind was full of questions. Would the river truly give her a child? What did it mean to bring the child back? And if she told anyone, would they even believe her? She didn't have the answers, but deep inside, a strange mix of fear and hope began to grow. That night she lay beside her husband, staring at the ceiling. The sound of the river's voice kept replaying in her head. "Go home. You will hear good news soon." For the first time in years, Ego found herself whispering a prayer, not to God, but to the spirit of the river. And far away, deep beneath the dark waters, something ancient and powerful stirred, waiting. It happened exactly 21 days after Ego's strange visit to the river. That morning, she woke up with a pounding headache. The light from the window felt too bright for her eyes. She sat up slowly, holding her forehead. Chike was already getting ready to go to work. "Are you okay?" he asked, looking at her with concern. Ego forced a smile. "I'm fine. Maybe I just didn't sleep well." But later that day, as she was cooking, she suddenly felt her stomach turn. The smell of the boiling soup made her rush outside and throw up. She thought it was something she ate, but the next morning it happened again. Days passed, and the vomiting continued. She also began to feel weak and sleepy all the time. Ego didn't suspect anything after all. 8 years had passed with no sign of pregnancy. Why would she think of it now? She even told herself it was probably malaria. One afternoon, she went to the stream to fetch water. There she met Mama Okafor, an old woman known in the village for her sharp eyes and quick tongue. The woman stared at her for a while before saying, "Ego, are you sure you don't have good news for us?" Ego frowned. "Good news? What do you mean?" Mama Okafor chuckled and pointed at her. "Look at your face. Your cheeks are fuller. Your eyes are shining. You are carrying a child." Ego laughed awkwardly. "Mama, don't joke with me. You know my story." But the old woman shook her head. "Mark my words, you are pregnant." Those words stayed in Ego's mind as she walked home. That night, she told Chike what the old woman said. At first, Chike didn't believe it either. But the very next week, they visited the village nurse, and after checking her, the nurse smiled. "Congratulations, Ego. You are 3 months pregnant." Ego's hands flew to her mouth. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She turned to look at Chike, who was staring at her with wide eyes, unable to speak. For the first time in many years, the heavy weight in their hearts lifted. They both laughed and hugged tightly, right there in the nurse's small clinic. From that day on, Ego was treated like a queen in her home. Chike would help her with chores. He made sure she rested well and ate enough. Some neighbors congratulated her warmly, but not everyone was happy. Chike's mother still didn't like her. She said nothing to congratulate Ego, and when other women spoke about Ego's pregnancy, the old woman would roll her eyes and say, Let us wait until the child is born before we start rejoicing." Months later, the time came. On a quiet evening, Ego went into labor. The pain was strong, but with the help of the village midwife, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Chike was overjoyed. He danced around the room, shouting praises. Ego held the tiny boy in her arms, feeling a love she had never felt before. When the naming ceremony was planned, Ego invited her family from the next village. They came early. bringing gifts and food to celebrate. But that day, trouble began. Chike's mother refused to let any of Ego's family members eat from the food they prepared for guests. She stood by the cooking area with her hands on her waist, shouting, "No, they will not touch this food. I know the charm they gave their daughter to tie my son down in marriage. Now they want to eat and destroy us completely." Ego froze when she heard those words. Her aunt tried to calm the situation, but Chike's mother was too loud and stubborn. Humiliation burned in Ego's chest. Guests began to whisper and stare. Some women shook their heads in pity, others in judgment. Ego quietly left the gathering and went inside. She sat on her bed, hugging her newborn son, and cried silently. Despite the ugly scene, the naming ceremony went on. The boy was named Obinna, meaning father's heart. Time passed quickly. Obinna grew into a smart and lively boy. He loved running around the compound, playing with his friends, and following Chike to the farm. Ego loved her son deeply. Every time she looked at him, she felt thankful. She no longer thought about the promise she had made to the river that day. In fact, she had almost forgotten about it completely. Life seemed normal, until one day. It happened on the third day, after Obinna's 7th birthday. The boy woke up looking pale. He refused to eat breakfast, saying his head hurt. By afternoon, his condition became worse. He lay in bed, unable to talk. Ego's heart raced. She called Chike quickly. They thought it was a common fever, but when they gave him herbs, he didn't improve. By evening, his breathing became slow and weak. Panicking, Chike carried him on his back, and together they went to a native doctor in the next village. The old man welcomed them into his small hut, filled with hanging charms, herbs, and calabashes. He looked at the boy for a while, touching his forehead and chest. Then, he sat back, staring at Ego with a strange expression. "Woman," he said slowly, "how did you get this child?" Ego blinked in confusion. "What do you mean? He is my son. I gave birth to him." The native doctor's eyes narrowed. "That is not what I am asking," I said. "How did you get him? Did you ask something, or someone, for this child?" Ego's mouth went dry. Memories of that day at the river flashed in her mind. The thunderous voice, her desperate promise, the rippling water. She felt her knees weaken. I don't understand," she whispered, though deep inside, she knew exactly what he meant. The native doctor leaned forward. "Woman, speak the truth. This child is not entirely yours. I can see it. I can feel it. There is a power holding his life, and it is not from the land of the living." Ego's heart thumped loudly. She turned to look at Chike, who was frowning in confusion. He had no idea about her visit to the river. The native doctor continued in a grave voice. "If you want to save your son, you must tell me the truth, before it is too late." Ego's lips trembled. The room felt hot. The sound of her own breathing filled her ears. She looked at her sick son lying on the mat, then at her husband, then at the old man staring into her soul. Her secret, the one she had buried for 7 years, was about to come out. Chike sat there, shocked. But could she say it? The native doctor's eyes remained fixed on Ego, waiting for her answer. Chike looked at her with confusion written all over his face. Ego swallowed hard and finally spoke. Her voice was shaking. I didn't tell you, Chike. 7 years ago, the day Mama Ifeoma insulted me at the market, I went to the river to cry. While I was there, a voice came from the water. It asked me if I wanted a child. I was afraid at first, but the voice told me not to run. I told it yes, that I wanted a child more than anything." She paused, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "The voice told me that if the river gave me a child, I must promise to bring the child back and let the child worship the river forever. I was desperate. I didn't even think about what it meant. I just said yes, over and over again. The voice told me to go home and that I would hear good news soon. 3 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. Chike stared at her, his mouth slightly open. Ego, are you saying Obinna is… Yes, she whispered, her head bowed. Obinna is the river's child. For a moment, there was silence in the hut. The native doctor finally nodded slowly. That explains it, he said. The river has come to claim its worship. You made a vow, woman, and you must keep it. If not, the boy's life will be taken. Chike rubbed his face, still struggling to accept what he had just heard. But when he looked at his son, lying weak and pale, he clenched his jaw. If this is what we have to do to save him, Chike said firmly, then we will do it. That very night, they went to the river with the native doctor. The moonlight shone on the surface of the water. The air was heavy, almost as if the whole river was watching them. The native doctor placed certain items on the sand: white cloth, a calabash of palm wine, a live cock, and 7 cowries. He made incantations, calling the spirit of the river. The water rippled, and a deep, familiar voice filled the air. Ego shivered. Woman, the voice boomed, you have returned with my child. Yes, Ego said quickly, her knees touching the ground. Please, he is sick. I am here to fulfill my promise. The river god gave instructions through the native doctor. They poured the palm wine into the water, spread the white cloth on the sand, and placed the cock on it. Then the bird was sacrificed, and its blood was poured into the river. Almost immediately, Obinna stirred. His eyes fluttered open, and his breathing became normal. Ego hugged him tightly, tears of relief running down her face. From that day, every 7 years, they returned to the river with Obinna to make the same sacrifice. Obinna grew into a tall, intelligent young man. He was loved in school for his brilliance and good manners. When he turned 19, something incredible happened. He won a full scholarship to study at a university abroad. Ego was overjoyed. She danced around the compound, telling everyone the news. But Chike's joy was not as full. This is good news, Chike said slowly. But what about the river? The next 7-year sacrifice is coming soon. If he is far away, how will we fulfill it? Ego's smile faded. She knew he was right, but she didn't want to crush her son's dream. We will talk to him, she said. They sat Obinna down and explained why it was important for him to be around for the sacrifice. Obinna listened politely, but his face showed doubt. Papa, Mama, with all respect, I don't believe in those things, he said. I am a Christian. I serve God, not the river. Chike's voice rose. This is not about belief. Your life depends on it. Your mother made a vow. But Obinna shook his head. I am going to school. I'll be fine. The argument ended there, but Chike was still worried. One morning, before the sun rose, Ego went to Obinna's room to call him for breakfast, but the bed was empty. On the table was a note. Mama and Papa, I am on my way to the airport. I didn't tell you because I know you would try to stop me. Please don't worry. I love you. Ego's legs gave way, and she sat on the floor, crying. Chike, he's gone, she shouted. Chike came running, read the note, and slammed his fist against the wall. That boy has signed his own death. At first, things seemed fine. Obinna would call once in a while, telling them about his studies and his part-time job. He sent them money sometimes. But when the 7th year came, the sacrifice time arrived, and Obinna was nowhere near home. Chike begged him over the phone to return, but Obinna laughed softly and said, Papa, I'm fine. Don't worry about that river story. Ego tried not to panic, but her nights became restless. She began to dream of the river again. In her dreams, the water was dark, and an enormous face rose from it, eyes glowing, mouth twisted in anger. Woman, the voice roared, you have broken your promise. Ego would wake up shaking, her clothes drenched in sweat. Every night, the dream came back. and the face of the river god seemed angrier each time. During the day, she moved like a ghost, barely speaking. Even her mother-in-law noticed. The old woman began to mock her openly. "I told you," she said with a smirk. "All that charm you did to tie my son, now it is starting to backfire. Let us see how you will save yourself this time." Ego would just walk away, tears stinging her eyes. Far away abroad, Obinna's life began to change. At first, it was small things, a constant headache, tiredness, and loss of appetite. He thought it was stress from school. But within weeks, it became worse. His skin grew pale, his body thin, and strange rashes appeared on his arms. Doctors at the hospital ran tests, but found nothing specific. They gave him medicine, but it didn't help. One night, Obinna dreamed he was standing by a river he had never seen before. The water bubbled, and a deep voice called his name. He woke up sweating, his heart racing. The next morning, the doctors told him his condition was getting worse. He sat on the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time, he thought about his father's warning. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't just a story. He began making plans to travel back home. Meanwhile, in the village, Ego's dreams became unbearable. Sometimes she would hear the river god's voice even in the daytime, like a whisper in her ear. "Bring him back, or he will die." Her hands would shake. She could barely eat. Even Chike began to lose hope. The days felt longer. The air in the house was heavy. And far away in a foreign hospital, Obinna's health was slipping away faster than anyone could explain. Something was coming, something they could no longer avoid. Obinna lay weak on his hospital bed. His body felt like it no longer belonged to him. Every part of him ached. He could barely lift his hand to drink water. The doctors had done all they could, but nothing was working. At night, he would close his eyes and hear the rushing sound of water in his ears. In his dreams, he saw the angry face of a god he didn't know, calling for him to return. One hot afternoon, while he was staring at the ceiling and thinking about his life, the door to his hospital room opened. A tall man dressed in simple white clothes walked in. Around his neck hung a small wooden cross. His face carried a calm smile. Obinna had never seen this man before. The stranger walked up to him and said, "Peace be unto you." Obinna wanted to speak, but the words caught in his throat. The man continued, "I was passing by, and the Lord led me here. May I pray for you?" Obinna didn't know why, but he felt something warm in his heart. He nodded weakly. The man placed a gentle hand on his head and began to pray in a strong, clear voice. "In the name of Jesus Christ, I command every spirit of sickness, every chain holding this young man to break now." The room felt different. Obinna's skin tingled, as though a warm light was pouring over him. The man prayed for several minutes, his voice full of power. Then, just as quietly as he had come, the man stepped back, smiled again, and said, "The Lord has set you free. Walk in his light." Without waiting for thanks, he turned and left. Obinna lay still for a moment, wondering what had just happened. Then, slowly, he sat up. The pain in his body was gone. The fever had disappeared. The weakness had vanished. He stood on his feet, strong and steady. He looked at his arms. The rashes were gone. His head felt clear. It was as if a heavy chain had been removed from him. Tears filled his eyes. He fell to his knees right there in the hospital room and lifted his hands. "Lord Jesus," he whispered, "I will worship you forever. You have healed me when no one else could. My life is yours." From that moment, Obinna's faith in God grew stronger than ever. While Obinna was celebrating his healing abroad, trouble was growing for Ego at home. One evening, as she was washing cassava behind the house, the air suddenly turned cold. The sound of rushing water filled her ears, but there was no river nearby. When she turned around, her heart almost stopped. Standing right there before her was the river god, no longer in her dreams, but in the flesh. Its eyes glowed like the moon. Its skin shimmered like wet scales. "Woman," it said in a deep, angry voice, "you have 21 days to bring my child to the river. If you fail, you will both be destroyed." Ego dropped the cassava and ran inside, trembling from head to toe. That night, she could not sleep. She told Chike everything, and together they managed to contact Obinna. When Obinna heard his mother's trembling voice on the phone, he listened quietly. She told him about the 21-day warning, about the river god appearing, and about their fear. Obinna did not panic. "Don't worry, Mama," he said gently. "I am coming home." Within days, he was on a flight back to Nigeria. His parents met him at the bus stop, hugging him tightly. Ego's eyes were red from crying, but Obinna's face was calm. The next morning, instead of heading to the river as his parents expected, Obinna gathered them in the sitting room. "Mama, Papa," he began, "I know what you expect me to do. But listen to me, Jesus Christ has set me free. I owe the river nothing. It has no power over me." Chike frowned. "Obinna, this is dangerous. We must obey." "No, Papa," Obinna said firmly. "The one who healed me in the hospital is greater than any river god. He is the creator of the rivers themselves. We will not bow to that spirit again." Ego's lips trembled. "But what if it harms you?" Obinna reached for her hands. "Mama, nothing can harm me because I belong to Christ now, and I want both of you to belong to Him too." That same day, Obinna went out into the village square. People gathered, curious to see the boy who had gone abroad and returned. He stood before them and told his story about his strange illness, the priest who came to his hospital bed, and the instant healing he received in the name of Jesus. He spoke with boldness. "My parents made a vow to the river when they were desperate for a child. But that vow was a chain meant to bind me forever. Jesus broke that chain. He can break every chain in your life too. No god of water, no idol, no spirit can stand before him." The villagers listened. Some nodded, others wept. Ego stood there with tears in her eyes, feeling a strange peace for the first time in years. After speaking, Obinna began to pray for the sick. A woman who had been bent over with back pain for years stood up straight. A little boy who could not walk began running around. An old man, blind in one eye, suddenly began to see. The crowd gasped and shouted. Many fell to their knees, crying out to God. Even Chike's mother, who had mocked Ego for years, stood frozen in shock. Slowly, she stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "I want to follow this Jesus too," she whispered. One by one, the villagers declared their faith in Christ. That night, Ego slept peacefully for the first time in many years. No dreams of rushing water. No glowing, angry face. Days passed. Weeks passed. The river god never appeared again. The fear that had ruled her life was gone forever. Obinna continued to preach in the village and other towns, leading many to Christ. Ego and Chike became active in the church, full of joy and free from the chains of the past. Ego often thought back to the day she went to the river crying. But now she understood there was a greater promise, one made by God Himself. Whom the Son sets free is free indeed. And so, the woman who once wept at the river became a mother filled with peace, and the boy once claimed by the river became a servant of the living God, bringing light wherever he went. The river never called again.